Okay, in some of the different presentations I do, I talk about a scale where you have good things on one side of the scale and you have some bad things happening on the other side of the scale. You have values to live by that are going to benefit your life, and then you have ones that are causing problems in your life. And that those things need to be counterbalanced. And in my life, I had a lot of abusive and traumatic things that happened as a child, so my scale was heavy on that side. But as time went on and I found recovery, I was able to add weight to the other side and counterbalance that and eventually make the positive side more healthy. So I have this little story that I imagine that when each of my children were born, that an angel came and told me that here is a bag that is the lessons in life that they need to learn, and it's your job to help them learn those lessons and add them to the positive side of their scale, and then at some point give them the rest of the coins that haven't happened yet in their life and allow them to lead their own life, use their own free will, and just hope that they continue to do the things that are going to bring their life good quality and value. So I tried to do that when I taught them how to feed themselves, bathe themselves, keep themselves clean, brush their teeth, eventually how to ride a bike, eventually how to manage the money that I gave them as allowance, to be able to drive a car, all the things. Those were lessons in which I tried to teach them how to do it in a responsible and respectful way, and then gave them the coin to say, okay, here, now that you've gotten to that point, this is for you to be able to do it. And if they ran into problems, they could come back to me and allow me to consult them, but I didn't want to take the free will away from them unless it got to the point that they were actually being a danger to themselves or other people in being so irresponsible, which I really didn't have those kinds of experiences with my kids. That for the most part, when they did something, they let me know and they allowed me to help them to make it right. Fortunately, they were able to take hold of those values that I had taught them. So I want to imagine that all these coins make up a person's lifetime. So we're going to break it into these groups here and say, let's suppose that this is from birth to 20 years old in the first group of coins. This is 20 to 40, this is 40 to 60, and this is 60 to 80. So in my life, if I'm weighing out and taking an inventory of my life experiences, whether they were positive and helping me go to a good quality of life, my best quality of life, or they were negative ones. I did have some people in my life that my grandmother was very loving and caring and gave me an example of some good values. And so I had some of those experiences happening in my life. With all the abuse that was happening though, I had my experiences of being told that I was not wanted, I was not loved, and that my mom's life would be better off if I had not been born. And so that was not supportive, not helpful. I had experiences of being physically abused. I was hit even in my crib to make me stop crying. It was I know counterproductive, but the thinking behind that is that if I get hit every time I cry, eventually I'm going to learn to quit crying. Then another thing is that my parents were both alcoholics, and so they drank, all of their lives from before I was born. My mother drank all the way through her pregnancy with me, as she did with my siblings. That after I was born, if I was crying and they wanted me to sleep, they put a little bit of whiskey in my bottle and put me to sleep. So Once again, there's, more alcohol abuse, physical abuse, and then the other thing that was a big one for me, and that was that from the age of 1.5 is my first memory of an experience of where I was sexually abused, and that continued until I was 12. So I learned to be submissive with that, and I didn't know any better to fight back or that this was even really wrong. I just thought it was, didn't feel right, but I thought it was just a part of what happens. And so I was supposed to submit to it. And so I did. And at 12, when my own sex drive kicked in, I realized that this was wrong. I was being used and taken advantage of, and I decided I was not going to be a victim anymore, realizing that I had been a victim. And so I started to fight back and not submit. But I didn't really know how to have a healthier life, because at this point I had all this weight on the negative side and I had so little weight on the positive side that I didn't know how to counterbalance that in any way. So it was many years into my adulthood before I really realized that what I was going to have to do is to start adding more weight to the positive side of my scale so that I would eventually be able to counterbalance this. So in my 20s, I started doing that with friendships and letting people a little bit closer, but I didn't let people touch me or get too close. But again, every experience that I had that was caring and connecting with the person, I tried to make it positive, to add weight to this side of my scale. And eventually, I got to the point where by the time I was in my mid-20s, I had added so much weight to the positive side of my scale that it was counterbalanced. Now, prior to that, again, I had absolutely no idea how to have a relationship, and it wasn't until I was well into my 20s, 27, before I actually even started to date, because I had made a promise to myself at 12 that I was no longer going to be a victim, but that I was not going to be a violator, and I didn't know how to not be a violator because those were the only two kinds of relationships that I knew sexually. So I chose not to have any dating relationships where that would be possible. So at 27, I finally decided that I would, I had grown enough and developed enough that I would take a chance. But it was a very difficult step for me to take. And but eventually I spent the rest of my life adding to the positive side of my scale. And so what I try to do when I'm talking to people who are teenagers and they've been through a lot like I have, is that you may have a lot of negative things that have happened in your life. Your scale may be tipped to where you don't know how you're going to ever be a positive and healthy person and have a good quality of life. But the way you do that is you quit doing the things that are bad for you and bad for those around you, that have the values of being unsafe, dishonest, disrespectful, irresponsible, and you start doing things to be the opposite of that. Make sure that you ask yourself before you do anything, is it safe? Is it honest? Is it responsible? And is it respectful? And if the answer to any one of those is no, you don't give yourself permission to do that anymore. And then instead of being that person that you were, you become the new person. Your inventory of who you are changes, and therefore you are a different person today than you were yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago. And again, you can tilt your scale, but when you take a look and say, okay, I still have the rest of my life ahead of me, and look at all the weight that there is in life experiences there, that by continuing to put the weight on this side, the positive side, instead of on the negative side, that I will tilt my scale and I will become the person who I want to be, instead of just allowing myself to continue to do the same things that happened in my life that made me unhappy and made me unhealthy, and adding weight to the negative side. I'm going to continue to change that and practice those things that are going to make me healthy.